Hi, welcome to episode 7. Time signatures are dumb. They are, you'll see what I mean. They weren't always. Our old mensuration symbols that we've talked about were kind of cool. If you remember, we had either a circle denoting something that was in triple time, or half a circle denoting something that was in duple time. These are our words for these now. Back then, this was called tempus perfectum, and this was called tempus imperfectum. Remember, the Trinity is the model of perfection. So 3 beats, a 3 beat per measure type of rhythm. Remember, they didn't have measures back then. It was just 3 of the note they called a beat per note above the one they called a beat. And so they used a circle for 3 beats and a half of a circle, what looks like a C, for any meter that had 2 beats. And then they looked at what we call the division, and they called the prolatio. If the prolatio had 3 beats for each tempus note, then it was a 3 and 3, the most perfect meter, a perfect tempus and a major prolatio. Or if it was an imperfect tempus, it could still have a major prolatio. That would be 2 divisions per beat, but 2 beats per what we now think of as measure, and 3 divisions per beat. Now we call these 2 aspects of meter simple and compound. These 2 words are going to get used again and again in music theory. It's kind of dumb. And so these were kind of the 4 meters in ancient times. We had 2 kinds of duple meter and 2 kinds of triple meter. One kind that had 2 divisions per beat, what we now call simple, and what back then we called minor prolatio, and one called compound, where you have 3 divisions per beat, and back then they would have called that major prolatio. They didn't really have quadruple meters back then, but we do now, and actually now we have a slightly more complicated picture. We have our simple and compound meters, and we have duple, triple, and quadruple meters. And I'm just going to go through and tell you probably the most common time signatures. Time signatures, that's the subject of the day. Time signatures are what we do today. Instead of this weird circle and dot thing that I made you learn for like 4 episodes, I just like the circle and dot thing, okay? I think it's a lot smarter of a way to do it, and I don't know why we changed to a weirder, harder to understand, and kind of dumber way. But we did. Probably the most common simple duple meter you'll see is cut time. See with the line through it. I kind of got into this, but it evolved from the same tempo inflation that I talked about when we were talking about semi-breves and breves and things like that. Due to that tempo inflation and the use of what used to be considered shorter note values to last for a longer amount of time, this line denoted that you were going down to the next level of notes for the beat. And you could put this line actually through any of the old mensuration symbols and through a weird step that's kind of hard to explain the set of circumstances, but it came to mean 2-2, what we now call 2-2, and I'll get into what that means. Another really common duple meter is 2-4. Probably the most common triple simple meter is 3-4, and easily the most common quadruple simple meter is 4-4. It's such a common meter that people call it common time, and it is also donated with a C. And again, some people think the C comes from the word common because it is called common time, but really the C, again, through a weird, kind of hard to explain exactly set of circumstances, this sign, the old sign for duple simple meters, in other words, the sign for a imperfect tempus minor prolatio mensuration came down through the ages and turned into this C. It doesn't stand for common, but hey, if that helps you remember it, great. The most common compound duple meter is 6/8. The most common triple compound meter is 9/8. And the most common quadruple compound meter is 12/8. Now let's talk about how time signatures are done. When you take your simple meters, let's start with simple meters. And let's start with the most common meter, 4/4. The top number is how many beats are in each measure. Simple enough. And then the bottom number is what gets the beat. Or to be more specific, the bottom number is, if you put the bottom number under 1 and express that as a fraction, so 1/4, that means a quarter note gets the beat. In other words, this guy, right? So in a measure of 4/4, there are 4 quarter note beats. You could have other kinds of quadruple simple meters. 4/2 would have 4 half note beats. You'll see that in like some ancient music. 4/8 you'll see every once in a while. Notice I'm not beaming together my eighth notes when I'm in 4/8, because you always want to beam into beats or break apart beams to reflect beats, as a rule of thumb. This works just the same with 3/4. In 3/4 you have 3 beats a measure, quarter note gets the beat. Or in 3/8 you have 3 eighth notes a measure because the eighth note gets the beat. Or if you had a piece of music in 3/2, you'll see that every once in a while, it has 3 half notes a bar and the half note gets the beat. So top number, always the number of beats per measure. Bottom number always is what exact durational value of note is assigned to that stream of time pulses that we have denoted as the beat. This all works great too for duple meters, right? 2/4, you got 2 quarter note beats a bar. 2/2, in other words, our good old cut time, you got 2 half note beats a bar. It's kind of weird. You could have this rhythm, but if this rhythm is happening in 4/4, we're thinking of it as 1, 2, 3, 4. If that same rhythm is happening in cut time, we're feeling just 2 beats, 1, 2. And we're feeling each one of these as a division, 1, 2. So 4/4, strong, weak, medium, weak. Cut time, strong, division, weak, division. It's a little different. You can think of the different dot diagrams, right? Here's this bar in 4/4, the dot way. And here's this bar in cut time, the dot way. These are divisions, so this is the beat, and this beat is stronger. Hey, it looks the same, doesn't it? But here's the thing, these are divisions, this is the beat, and this is the bar. Whereas in 4/4, the bottom line was the beat, this was the half a bar, and this was the bar. And again, not to keep beating a dead horse about this, but that's where that's kind of what this cut sign used to mean, and what it kind of, I guess, still does mean if you think about cut time in relation to common time. What you do when you change from common time to cut time is you have the same amount of durational value per measure. It's just that what you count as the beat moves up in the hierarchy. So instead of counting each one of these as a beat, you count each one of those as a division. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, you have 1 and 2 and. It's important to be able to think about that. Think about meters where the meter, the symbol itself doesn't like suggest to you what the beats are, stuff like that. Because let's say we were going to try and write a duple compound meter. We'd write 2 beats a measure, but then what kind of beat can you divide into 3s? A quarter note divides into 2 eighth notes, right? An eighth note divides into 2 16th notes. Basically, you can't. You're going to need a dotted note. And if you remember, a dotted note, like a dotted quarter note, is like saying a quarter note tied to an eighth note. A dot always adds half the value of a note to its duration. So a dotted half note is like a half note tied to a quarter note. Or a dotted whole note is like a whole note tied to a half note. And if you think about it, anytime you take something and add half of itself to it, you have made something that is divisible by 3, right? It used to be, this quarter note used to be like 2 eighth notes tied together already. Now it becomes like 3 eighth notes tied together once you put a dot on it. Where again, this is like 3 quarter notes tied together. And then all you have to do is untie them and you get your level of division. So if we wanted to do this, there's not a number that we can use as the denominator of a fraction that describes a dotted quarter note. There was a time in the 1960s when people started writing a duple compound meter like this, where they would literally write a quarter note with a dot on it. And that way you got to follow kind of the same rule. Top number is how many beats per measure, bottom number is what gets the beat. So a duple compound meter would be like 2 beats a measure, dotted quarter gets the beat. Or maybe a triple compound could be like this, or a quadruple compound could be like this. But it never really caught on, and the way that had developed over the years never budged, and we still do it the dumb way. Get used to it. Music theory is sort of a science in that it's like a systematic body of knowledge. But imagine a science where when we find out something is wrong or like based on wrong assumptions, we just keep doing it anyhow. It's like it's more like a language that way. It's the vocabulary of music theory is infused with all kinds of outmoded and outdated ways of thinking about music, but we just still talk about it using the old vocab because we do. It's weird. There's so many examples of that. I always like to point them out because I find it fascinating. Today we call this 6/8. Not 2 over dotted quarter note. And in a compound meter, notice like 6 or 8, nothing about that tells you you're in a duple meter. There's no 2. You might, God perish the thought. Some people just think 6/8 works the same way, where there's 6 beats a measure and an eighth note gets the beat. But no. There are 6 divisions per measure, and the eighth note gets the division. You just have to know that these 6 eighth notes divide into 2 groups of 3. You just have to know that. That's what I mean that time signatures are done. Same with 9/8. You just have to know that it's not just 9 equal eighth notes. It's 3 groups of 3 eighth notes, which are the divisions, the compound divisions of 3 dotted quarter notes, which are the beats. And same as in quadruple compound meter, 12/8. 4 dotted quarter notes are the beats. 12 eighth notes are the divisions. And you don't know that it's 4 unless you know. The good news is these top numbers of our time signatures never change. If it's a 2, it's duple simple. If it's a 3, triple simple. If it's a 4, quad simple. 6, 9, and 8, compound, duple, triple, quad. Never changes. It's dumb, but you just have to learn it. It's what we do. I will see you next time. Goodbye.